So imagine for a second that you run a tech startup. You wake up on a random Tuesday, check your phone, and find out you are being sued by the absolute biggest, most powerful legacy players in your entire industry.
Which is pretty much the ultimate nightmare scenario.
Right. We're talking absolute giants, flanked by a class action lawsuit from over 1,000 independent creators, all claiming your core product is fundamentally illegal.
Yeah, I mean, in any normal scenario, you call your lawyers, you pack up the office, and you just accept that the dream is over.
Exactly. But looking at the financial reports and confidential label strategy memos we're analyzing today, that is not what happened at all.
Not even close.
No. Instead of going bankrupt, the most prestigious venture capitalists in the world looked at this massive existential legal inferno, smiled, and handed the startup almost $500 million.
It sounds completely counterintuitive, right? You would think institutional investors would run as fast as they can from that kind of liability. But in Silicon Valley, diving headfirst into a catastrophic copyright lawsuit isn't a mistake. It is actually a highly calculated, historically proven playbook.
Right, and we are pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources today to figure out exactly why. We've got VC financial breakdowns, internal strategic pivots from major music labels, and some really granular survival blueprints for independent artists trying to navigate all this.
And our mission here isn't just to talk about the surface level of AI music. We are really trying to map out the new economic battlefield happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, because this arms race is literally changing the definition of what a song actually is.
Yeah.
But to understand that battlefield, we really have to start with the $400 million elephant in the room.
Right, the catalyst. The sources focus heavily on Suno AI, which recently secured a $400 million Series D funding round from major players like, Andreessen Horowitz and Lightspeed.
That is just huge money.
It is. And it rockets their valuation to $5.4 billion.
Okay, hold on. I need to stop you there because that is the part that just completely breaks my brain. They secure a multi-billion-dollar valuation while being actively sued by Universal Music Group, Sony, and roughly 1,800 independent artists.
Yeah, it's wild.
In literally any other industry, that kind of pending litigation is toxic waste.
Yeah.
Why would a venture capital firm touch a company like that with a 10-foot pole, let alone give them $400 million?
Well, because those VC firms don't view a massive copyright lawsuit as a threat to the business model. They view it as a customer acquisition cost.
A customer acquisition cost.
Yeah, it is an unbelievably expensive cost, sure, but it's just the price of doing business. Industry insiders actually refer to this as the YouTube or Spotify playbook.
Oh, okay. I think I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Because both of those platforms faced the exact same legal apocalypse when they launched.
They did, yeah. In the early days, Napster, YouTube, Spotify, they were all sued relentlessly by major labels for just astronomical copyright infringement. So the strategy from the venture capital side is to fund the platform so heavily and so quickly that it achieves this undeniable global scale before the court system can even process the paperwork.
You want the user base to become so massive that the technology essentially becomes inevitable.
Exactly.
I'm trying to visualize how this works in practice. It feels like, let's say you decide to build a high-speed rail line right through the middle of a crowded city.
Okay.
You don't ask for permits.
Uh-huh.
You don't buy the land.
Uh-huh.
You just bulldoze right through private properties, city parks, people's backyards, and lay down the tracks.
And the city government is obviously furious.
Right. The city is furious. The property owners are suing you for billions. But you open the train for free.
And suddenly half the city is using it to commute every single day.
Exactly. Within a month, millions of people rely on it to get to work. Traffic clears up. The economy of the city starts to depend on your illegal train.
Yeah.
By the time you finally end up in front of a judge 5 years later, you just point out the window and say, look, if you order me to tear these tracks up, the city's economy halts. You're betting the city will be forced to regulate and license the train rather than destroy it.
That is the exact mechanism at play here. Once you have hundreds of millions of active users generating audio every day, the legacy labels are mathematically forced to settle. They can't unring the bell.
Right. The damage is already done.
Exactly. In previous eras, those settlements usually ended with the major labels taking a massive equity stake in the platform itself. But there's a second layer to this $5.4 billion valuation that makes it even more interesting.
Oh, what's that?
The total addressable market, or the TAM, goes way beyond just replacing the pop stars you hear on Spotify.
Which is funny because when I think of AI music, my brain immediately goes to like a robot churning out a catchy 3-minute pop song.
Right, that's what everyone thinks. But the financial reports in our sources indicate the VCs are looking at a much wider horizon. The traditional music industry is just a tiny fraction of their target market.
So what's the actual target?
The VCs view Suno and platforms like it as the foundational B2B infrastructure for the entire internet.
B2B infrastructure. Give me an example of what that actually looks like in the wild.
Okay, think about the video game industry. Right now, a studio pays a composer to write a static looping track for a boss fight. Right?
Sure. Standard stuff.
But with an AI audio API integrated directly into the game engine, the music can be generated dynamically in real time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. If your character's health gets low, the music organically shifts to a minor key, the tempo slows down, the cellos get more aggressive. It adapts seamlessly to billions of individual gaming sessions.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
So they aren't trying to be the next Taylor Swift. They are trying to be the physics engine of audio.
That is a great way to frame it.
Like, nobody buys a physics engine, but it secretly runs every single video game on the console.
Exactly. Add in royalty-free APIs built directly into video editing software for TikTok creators or adaptive audio for fitness apps. The VCs are betting that even if Suno gets permanently locked out of traditional streaming apps, the background infrastructure market is more than enough to justify that $5.4 billion valuation.
Okay, that makes the $400 million make a lot more sense.
Mm.
But our sources mention that war chest isn't just for scaling up the tech or paying lawyers. They are actively funding a strategic pivot.
Yes, the pivot to legitimacy. Suno is using that massive influx of capital to transition away from their original, highly controversial model of just scraping everything on the open internet.
Right.
They are shifting toward building fully licensed, clean data models.
Wait, so they build the multi-billion-dollar valuation on scraped data?
Yeah.
And then once they have the money, they try to buy their way into the clear.
Essentially, yes. With $500 million in the bank, they can walk into large publishing houses, independent catalogs, and enterprise rights holders and offer massive upfront checks to legally license their data from this point forward.
They literally buy their way out of the gray area.
Exact.
But that still leaves the massive lawsuit from Universal and Sony sitting on the table regarding everything they did before they pivoted.
True, but remember the VC strategy. Litigation is priced into the model. They can afford the most elite intellectual property lawyers on Earth, and they can afford to drag this out in federal court for a decade.
Wow.
And during that 10-year delay, their models improve exponentially, their user base solidifies, and the legacy copyright laws they are currently violating will likely be rewritten entirely to accommodate the new reality anyway.
Okay, so that perfectly lays out the startup and VC side of the board. Overwhelming force, inevitable scale, and pricing in a decade of legal fees.
Yep.
But if you're reading these exact same financial reports and you're an executive at a major label, you have to be panicking. You realize you can't bankrupt this AI company in a war of attrition anymore. They simply have too much money.
No, you can't bleed them dry.
Right. So how do the major labels actually fight back?
Well, we are seeing a very aggressive strategic shift from the major labels right now. They are moving away from a strategy of pure destruction because they know they can't kill the generation machine itself.
Okay, so what's the play?
They're shifting toward a strategy of containment and capture. They are attempting to completely choke off the distribution and the revenue.
Let's unpack the targeting downstream tactic, because reading this in the sources genuinely terrified me. Tell me if I have this right.
Go for it.
Instead of just fighting the AI company in court, Sony will actually go after the AI company's customers.
That is the core of the containment strategy. If you can't stop the factory from making the product, you block the roads leading away from the factory.
So imagine I'm an independent video game developer. I'm a week away from launching my indie game, and I use an AI platform to generate some background tavern music.
Okay.
You're telling me Universal Music isn't going to sue the AI platform? They're going to send a cease and desist to me.
They will absolutely target you. The label will claim the AI track in your game bears a resemblance to something in their catalog or was likely trained on their catalog.
But that's so hard to prove.
It doesn't matter. They don't even have to take you to court. Just the threat of freezing your game's launch or demonetizing an ad agency's national commercial is enough to inject absolute terror into the B2B market.
That is so ruthless.
Yeah.
You are legally terrifying the customer base so that no major brand or studio will ever risk using the AI platform's API.
It's highly effective. And the labels are coupling this intimidation tactic with aggressive legislative bypasses, too.
Right. The sources talk a lot about the No Fakes Act. Why do the labels need new laws if they already have traditional copyright?
Because traditional federal copyright law wasn't built for neural networks. If Universal takes an AI company to court, trying to prove on a technical level that a black box algorithm was trained on the specific C minor chord progression of a Drake song, it's incredibly difficult.
Oh, right, because it's not a direct sample.
Right. It gets bogged down in expert testimonies about data weights and parameters. Juries don't understand it.
But the No Fakes Act changes what they have to prove.
Completely. The No Fakes Act focuses specifically on voice and likeness, not the underlying musical composition.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is infinitely easier and far more persuasive to a jury to play an AI track and say, listen to this, it sounds exactly like Drake's specific vocal timbre. You don't have to prove the training data.
You just have to prove the output clone's a human characteristic.
Exactly. It's a much sharper legal weapon.
So they choke the B2B clients with cease and desists, and they attack the AI companies directly through voice likeness laws. But the strategy memo also talks heavily about something called the walled garden.
Yes.
And this feels like the most impactful part for regular listeners who just use Spotify.
Absolutely. The majors are leveraging the exact same playbook they used against Spotify a decade ago. If you can't beat the technology, you own the environment it lives in.
Okay, explain how they do that.
Well, Universal and Sony own the vast majority of the catalog that makes platforms like Spotify and Apple Music functional. Without the major labels, Spotify is essentially an empty shell.
Yeah, nobody's paying $10 a month to not listen to Taylor Swift.
Right. So the labels are using that massive leverage to force the streaming platforms to rewrite their own internal rules.
Are these the AI transparency tags the sources mentioned?
That's a big part of it. The labels are demanding mandatory transparency tags for anything AR generated, and they are initiating massive algorithmic purges of what they classify as fraudulent streams.
Wow.
The ultimate architecture they are building ensures that if an AI track miraculously goes viral, it gets instantly demonetized or scrubbed from the platform entirely.
Unless it has a major label watermark.
Exactly.
The sources refer to this as the client data squeeze, because I read that the labels are flat out refusing to license their catalogs to platforms like Suno, even when Suno waves that $400 million check in their face.
Yeah, they won't even entertain the offer.
But at the same time, the labels are launching their own authorized AI tools, like that Spotify and Universal Remix tool.
It's a brilliant, if cynical, public relations maneuver. The labels are trying to train the public, and more importantly, lawmakers, to equate ethical AI with AI that pays Universal Music Group.
That is just wild.
They are perfectly happy to let fans play with generative AI as long as it happens inside a heavily policed ecosystem where all the generated intellectual property and all the revenue flows directly back to the major label headquarters.
Okay, so let's synthesize all of this, because it paints a pretty bleak picture for anyone who isn't a massive corporation.
It really does.
The venture capitalists are building a mega highway and pricing in the lawsuits. The major labels are building a massive walled garden where they control the toll booths.
Yep.
If I am an independent creator, let's say I'm an indie producer who just got swept off Spotify by an algorithmic purge because I use an AI mastering tool, what on earth is my next move? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take that question with you, keep exploring, and keep an eye on how the technology behind the scenes is reshaping the art all around you. We'll catch you next time.